It's hard to develop self-awareness, and we know that because self-awareness is connected to self-discipline, it affects our goals. So how would you all suggest to go about cultivating self-awareness?
I would say taking time to listen to your emotions, because sometimes when you fail, you're like, okay, I'm gonna get back on it, but you don't take that time to think, you know what? I'm upset that I failed. Why did I fail? What was I feeling at that time that made me not want to go to the gym? And then figure out what that was, and then you're getting to the root problem. Sometimes you're like, I'm gonna get back on it, and you keep failing and you don't even know why. And then you're just mad at yourself.
I think that's a great assessment. Others, how would you say to go about cultivating self-awareness?
You lose the idea of perfectionism. That like you're gonna start to have it all together. That's what I think. I'm just gonna take it biblically for a quick moment, but like, but no, like in the Bible, it's like God never called the qualified; it was the unqualified, and then He qualified them. And it's just like even in the moments where we're trying to figure out like who we are and where we want to go, it's like our identity is really in God, and just like getting closer to that, I feel like is where I found solitude and peace as well.
Wow.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to yet another CAYA. I am your host on tonight, Reverend Eric Edwards. It is my absolute joy and privilege to have you all joining in for episode 2 of CAYA 2025. That's right, we are already at the second episode of CAYA. Tonight, I'm joined by some great panelists, 2 of our CAYA members. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So let's start over here.
Hi, my name is Kelly.
Welcome, Kelly. Welcome back to another CAYA.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
It's been a couple months since you've been on.
It has.
Yeah, I forgot the conversation we talked about. But it was a good one nonetheless. But it's great to have you back on here. And who are you?
Yes. Hi, I'm Courtney.
Courtney, how you doing, Courtney?
I'm good. This is my 3rd CAYA. I'm so happy to be
3
here.
already?
Yes.
Oh my God. I just remember 2.
I know.
Wow. What was the first one?
When we talked about zodiacs and everything.
Well, what was the second one? No, I'm serious because I only remember twice.
I don't remember the second one. Yes, the second one I was there. Remember, we talked about family right before the holidays.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes. Okay. So welcome back to your 3rd CAYA. It's definitely great to have you back. We have a great topic for you on tonight. Our topic on tonight is Sankofa, moving forward while looking back. Sankofa is a word from the Akan tribe in Ghana. The literal translation of Sankofa is, quote, "It is not a taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind," end quote. Another variation of the meaning of Sankofa is a shortened version that simply is this: return and fetch it. The symbol of Sankofa is of a mystical bird that is flying forward with its head turned backwards, and its egg. It has an egg in its beak. The Sankofa symbolizes the Akan people's quest for knowledge among the Akan, with the implication that the quest is based on critical examination and intelligent and patient investigation. That's a lot. In other words, here's a very just succinct way of putting it. The Akan believe that the past serves as a guide for planning for the future. To the Akan, it is the wisdom of the past that ensures a strong future. Notably, if we today are going to shape a more just future, a more just society, then we cannot forget the past. We are talking about this topic this evening because if we are going to cultivate the future that we desire and actualize God's plans for the community, then we must allow the wisdom of the past to influence our present actions. One thing I'm seeing amongst young adults is they're saying this: we are not our ancestors, right? I've kind of seen that on social media, young adults saying, yeah, we're not our ancestors. While, yes, we may not be our ancestors identity-wise, right? We are our own unique being. We cannot just downplay what they've done for society, who they are to us, in the past that they have paid for us so that we can be here right now. As young adults, we are the current leaders of society. In fact, we are described as the hope of society. prior generations are hopeful in us because they recognize our potential. People believe that our generation of young adults have what is necessary to transform lives and to make the community better. As young adults, we already occupy influential positions. We are gifted. We possess skills that are already being used to positively impact the community. We are creative and possess a desire to utilize our creativity. We have unique perspectives on situations, and we are strong. If y'all haven't got anything else, we are important, and we have to recognize that. Everything that is needed to affect change and transformation are already inside of us. But although this is true, we must recognize that we cannot do it by ourselves. We do not need to abandon the past. Instead, we must learn from it so that we can be the change that we are hoping for. So with this in mind, the goal of this CAYA is to empower young adults and all of our viewers to be the change that you are hoping for, right? In other words, all of us are necessary for the flourishing of the community. All of our gifts, all of our skills, all of our talents, all of our knowledge and wisdom are necessary for the well-being of the community. And through this CAYA, you will be motivated and inspired to be an agent of change. That's what I want you to know. You have what it takes to not to just one hope for change, but to be the change, regardless of your age, regardless where you are in life. You already have God-given gifts, and you are empowered by the Holy Spirit to do what it takes to be the change that our community so desperately need in this year of 2025. So are y'all ready to dive into this great conversation tonight?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Good. So let's start off with our opening discussion.
Yes.
If you could interview or have a conversation with any Black historical figure from the 20th century, who would it be and why? And you may have multiple, so name them all, right?
So I think for me, I went to elementary school at A. Philip Randolph. And I never knew who that was, or maybe they told me, but, I think I would want to interview him because, he was a pivotal part of the civil rights movement. I don't want to say, kind of bullied, but, strategic activism is kind of what they said he did in regards to helping to desegregate the armed forces. And I think that by leveraging, the power that we have in numbers, he was able to successfully do that because the president that was up for re-election, Harry Truman, needed the Black vote. And, by organizing a march on Washington, you're like, hey, we're going to protest and, you won't get this Black vote unless you do this. And he was able to be successful by doing that. And so I think we have to remember the importance of power in numbers, and just kind of be bold in what you feel and what you want to stand for.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out A. Philip Randolph because you can still see the fruit of his work even till today, with we having Black leadership in the militaries, right? So many of our armed forces soldiers are African American and people of color, right? Serving important and high up roles. Thank you, A. Philip Randolph, for really pushing for the desegregation in our armed forces. So, Courtney, how about you? If you could interview or have a conversation with any Black historical figure from the 20th century, who would it be and why?
Yeah, so I actually, to go off like you said about being bold, I picked Rosa Parks. I find how courageous she was to not give up her own seat on that bus that day. Very encouraging because it can be scary to want to stand up for yourself. And I actually had a really nice quote by her I would like to share. So she said, "I was not tired physically or no more tired than I usually was at the end of a working day. I was not old, although some people have an image of me being old then. I was 42. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." And I really like that because that's how you can feel sometimes. Like you're just tired of feeling like you're the one giving in.
No, you can grow tired and constantly trying to fight for something, constantly trying to change something, constantly trying to positively impact people's lives. Um, that's tiring work. There's actually a term for that. I forgot it when I was doing some research, but it's a whole psychological term, just like a term. You get burnout just from constantly showing up and being here, and that in and of itself is tiring.
But I love that her doing that sparked many boycotts after that were successful.
Yeah.
And actually, Martin Luther King was one of the ones who led one of those. So just that one courageous action had a big impact at that.
A bold action during that time. So no, she definitely is very appreciated and lifted as a pillar for what she has done for us as a community. Well, my person, many of you probably have not heard of him. His name is Howard Washington Thurman. He's kind of a name that you learn about when you're in seminary. He is a theologian, was a theologian rather. He was the first black dean of Howard University Divinity School. Then he went on to Boston to be the dean there. He started a interracial church in San Francisco. In a time where interracial churches were not a thing, right? There's a saying that say 11 o'clock is the most segregated hour on a Sunday in church.
My God.
And during that time, that was really true. 11 o'clock was the most segregated hour, but yet he went in with a white minister and started an interracial church that actually thrived during that time. But what struck me about Howard Thurman is not just that, because that's some hard work too, and very countercultural and radical, but also he's known for being what's called a mystic, meaning he sees God all throughout creation. It's not just in the human to human encounter, it's also in the human nature encounter. So for instance, he tells a story in his memoir about a time when he was on the beach and he heard God talking to him on the beach. He could see God, hear him talking in the beach. There's another time he talks about sitting under a tree, kind of like an Elijah experience where God meet Elijah at the tree. Howard Thurman reflects on a time where God kind of encountered him at a tree. And then in his memoir, there's another time where he was sweeping an apartment and he saw a rat and he was about to kill it. But he said that he heard a voice that say, "Don't hurt me. I'm just trying to live." And Howard Thurman took that to be the voice of God saying, be careful with how you treat creation. Just because you don't like it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not important to God and important to the larger body of creation itself.
That's good.
So I'm intrigued with Howard Thurman, one, because of his encounters, but then thirdly, and there's a lot to read about Howard Thurman, but thirdly, he was the spiritual mentor for a lot of people in the civil rights movement. For instance, he was a spiritual mentor for Martin Luther King.
Oh, wow.
He very much encouraged Martin Luther King, helped Martin Luther King in some of those pivotal moments. So I would just kind of want to ask him, right, how did you take a behind the scenes route or approach to the civil rights movement by attending to the spirituality of the civil rights leaders, right? He kind of showed that there's a spiritual component that needs to be uplifted for even those leaders. And I would just kind of want to engage with him, like, what was it like to be the spiritual mentor of Martin Luther King? What were you telling Martin Luther King, right? So yeah, just to have somebody of that magnitude in front of me would be like, wow.
And I love that he kept God first.
Yeah. Oh, he was strongly attached to God. Howard Washington Thurman was that dude. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I think what I find interesting about everyone we talked about is, although, we have one person who was organizing marches on Washington, then we have Rosa Parks who decided to stay in that seat on that bus, and then we have someone who decided to integrate churches. I think everyone took a different route, but the same result was accomplished. I think when it comes to activism or, standing up for what you believe, you don't always have to take the typical route.
Yeah.
Come on, that was
no. It takes a body working in different spheres of society, right? It's different aspects, different areas, but we all come together to accomplish this common goal. I mean, it's like the body of Christ that you hear Paul in 1 Corinthians, right?
Literally.
We are one body, but different members of the body. We have the common goal, but we just function in a different way and area of the body. But we all come together for the same thing. And that is so needed and important for us today, especially in a time where social media, we're going to get to it later, but social media is telling you, you have to do this to be influential. You have to do this to create positive change. We all got to do this one thing. That's just not true.
No, it's not God's image for us.
It's not God's image for us, and it's not authentic to the gifts that God has placed in you or to just your being in and of itself. So if you don't get nothing else that we say on this guy, I want you to get you as an individual in the community or the collective is important. You have something that God wants to use and that's necessary to the body of Christ. And don't you dare conform to the places that people tell you to conform to.
Amen.
All right. So now let's get to our first discussion today. What are some of the unique challenges for millennial versus Z, and how can resilience play a role in overcoming these challenges? In other words, right, how do you respond when things do not go as planned?
When things do not go as planned. I think for me, I have to look at what I can control, which is only how I react to something. So I have to regulate my emotions and, how I feel about it. And really, if it's something that I could influence change with, can I do that? What way do I go about doing that? But if not, I just have to really process it and kind of like move on. It's easy to say, especially, if it's something that really doesn't have a large impact on what you're doing or where you're trying to go or the point that you're trying to make. But I think having things not go as planned just gives you a chance to perfect it, or, practice. How do I recover from this? How do I bounce back? Maybe one day I could be an inspiration to someone else who might be going through the same thing, so.
I like that.
I love that because that goes into what I was going to say. A lot of it is just my faith. That is where my faith comes into a big part. I know that God's ways aren't mine, the way He thinks. So just looking at maybe change or anything that didn't go my way is redirection or protection. And I just look at it like I know God's in control. Like that's sometimes all you can say. It's like God got it.
So what are some of these unique things that you feel like our generations are facing today? And then how can resilience play a role in overcoming those challenges?
The biggest difference I know is social media, our access to technology. It can be overwhelming seeing how much injustice, because you can just scroll and see it, be on the news, and that's all you see. So it can be overwhelming seeing it all at one time. You might feel like you're not able to do anything, but the resilience is just starting in your community, things that may be more locally, trying to help out in that way. But I know our ancestors, they had what was right in front of them. But social media can be overwhelming because you're looking at it in a broader aspect.
Yeah, I think some that I highlighted was, and social media falls along these lines, a fast-changing society.
That is true.
Things are changing at a rapid pace.
Every time you look up, something's changed.
Every time you look up, something has changed. Clothing and beauty trends.
Yeah.
What's the most recent thing on social media to deal with?
Yeah.
What's the most recent thing somebody said you should be doing? Where you should be in life? But all of this stuff is just changing. You got new technology emerging every day. It's like AI just came out of nowhere.
It did.
It's like one day, next thing you know, AI just popped on the computer. Now I got like Gemini or something now. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
Like all of this stuff. The apps. You got Google helping you out. I didn't even ask for Google AI's input, but it's here. So fast changing society, you feel like you may not be able to keep up with all that's going on. And if you want to be honest, some of that can be scary, right? You don't want to be left behind in what's going on. Another one that lines up, FOMO, the fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to be excluded from anything. If somebody else is doing it, we must do it. If somebody else have something, we have to have it. Also, at our age, right, we have a lot of hopes and dreams and plans that have not materialized, right? It's places where we thought we would be at right now.
Right.
That we're not at.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's experiences that we thought we would experience that, but we're not there. But with this in mind, I think all of this is emphasized on why resilience is so important for a daily experience. To practice resilience daily is so important because it can maintain our health, compassion, and grace in the face of change and fear. Right? The American Psychological Association says that resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant source of stress. It involves bouncing back from these difficulties. And I think that right there is difficult to do when something's fast changing. How do you keep bouncing back to all these things that's changing in society, right? But we must practice resilience because it'll help us to feel empowered and more self-confident. Resilience will help us to recognize the difficulty of the situation, but it'll also prompt us to believe that we will overcome it. Also, resilience will help us to be certain of our dignity and worth while we endure challenges. It will help us to see that we are capable of rising. We are strong. It'll help us to believe that. And then it will help us to believe that there's nothing that will prevent us from thriving and succeeding. So today we must continue to practice resilience because change is inevitable, right? When we are resilient, we will recognize that change and adversity will happen. You cannot make it through this life unscathed. It's impossible, which means we must acknowledge the truth of the situation, right? As you said, acknowledge what's in your control and what you can't control.
Exactly.
Acknowledge that things did not go as expected. Acknowledge that you are disappointed with the outcome of the way that things are happening, right? In other words, resilience will not cause you, and it should not cause you, to downplay the effect that a situation is having on you. We absolutely must recognize how we are feeling and be truthful about what's in our control when it's not in our control. But when we practice resilience, which is being an optimist, positive thinking, remaining active in our social groups, not isolating, practicing self-care, and implementing positive coping strategies, we'll be able to bounce back and move forward while our challenges persist. Ultimately, resilience will help us to be hopeful and certain that our present struggles will not endure forever. Here's the one thing I do want young adults to know, right? We are resilient. Okay? Because we also act like we haven't been through a pandemic.
That was wow.
It was tough. And if I had to graduate in the pandemic and then start a new program 3 months later in the pandemic, and not just start a new program anywhere, but at one of the hardest schools in the country. That's difficult.
That was something that everybody in the world felt, That was a true trauma change.
And the fact that we survived can be credited to resilience. In fact, that's what a lot of psychologists and sociologists and therapists are actually saying about Gen Zers, that because of our ability to have made it through, we are resilient. That's the proof right there. We made it through, but didn't just make it through. We're actually thriving in what we're doing. We bounced back. We didn't get held down.
And something I wanted to say, even though it does seem like it can be so much changing so fast, that's why it's important to be rooted in your own truths and your own morals and know what you stand on. Because just because society says one thing, if that doesn't go with what you believe in and what God says, that can give you peace to know too, well, that doesn't have anything to do with me.
Right. So what would be your advice to the people who are, kind of struggling to get to that space?
Yeah, because I wasn't always in that space either myself. And
how'd you get there?
Yeah, I just truly think God, the more being around like-minded people helped a lot too.
Community is important.
Community is so important.
The right community is important.
The right, equally yoked people around me. And just getting more in your word. Honestly, I know everybody always says it, but the more you read the Bible for yourself and you just see what God says about you, No, I don't have to go what society says or anything like that. But
you got to cultivate your own faith.
yeah, and just
You
having
gotta
that
reassure
relationship
yourself.
with God, it all helps.
And I know, I feel like we said this last guy, but positive self-talk.
Yes.
You have to
help.
affirm
There's
yourself.
power in our tongue.
It is power in our tongue.
You have to affirm yourself. We did say this January, but I think it's worth saying again. What do you say to yourself when adversity start to hit? Right? Do you talk down to yourself, oh, I can't do it, I can't make it, this is too much? Or are you saying, oh, I can do this, this is just another challenge that I'm gonna endure, but I'm gonna get through it in an absolutely great way? Or are you gonna reframe your thinking? Yes, this is challenging, maybe there's a lesson that I can learn about myself in this challenge. Doesn't mean that it's difficult. Doesn't mean that it's not difficult. But maybe there's something in this that I can learn. So
because we do grow being uncomfortable. Truly, I've learned that.
Exactly. So let's move on to another question. How do the struggles and victories of those before us help us in our community to navigate today's challenges?
Well, I think something to look at is, okay, they've been through, something similar. It's a little different, kind of like a different font, but, they made it through. So I know that if they made it through, then we can make it through as well. We might have to do things a little bit differently. We can't be as peaceful. We have to be a little bit more boisterous. But, looking back and just seeing how they handled those situations and kind of taking from what they did and, applying, the new age tactics to it and kind of just moving forward like that. But I think it's important to, look back, ponder, think about, and move forward with new ideas.
I mean, it reminds me of what Keontae said when we were in our CAYA planning meeting, that you have to create change. You have to, the methods you use for change have to be relevant for today.
Correct.
Right. So I think you're onto something when you definitely say that. How about you, Courtney? Right. How do the struggles and victories of those before us help us in our community to navigate today's challenges?
I definitely agree. Like you said, it just shows us, one, that we can do it because they did it. And just sticking together. I think community helps so much in that aspect. Like just figuring out what you can do. Because like you said, focusing on what you can control. And just leaning on each other, that helps. That can help a whole lot.
No, you're exactly right. So I want to approach this from two lenses. I'm going to have the faith standpoint.
Okay.
And then the real world physical standpoint. All right. From a faith standpoint, the struggles and victories of those before us show us that God is faithful.
Correct.
Yes,
okay.
Same God.
They show us a God who does not abandon the Lord's promises to God's people. Their journeys show us a God who remains present with God's people as challenges and difficulties endure. Right? Ultimately, by looking at their journey, we can increase our knowledge and strengthen our faith in the Lord.
Right.
And that brought me to Joshua 1, where God told Joshua, be courageous, but also as I was with Moses, I was with you, right? It speaks to the God's enduring presence over time, that God is with those in the past, God is with us today, and God is going to be with those tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? So it literally reassures us that God is walking and journeying with us as we're moving through. So it speaks to the faithfulness of God. But then secondly, the struggles and victories of those before us, when we're talking about being the change agent, right? It can motivate us to not, as things are worsening and more challenges are arising, we cannot abandon our dreams and goals. You cannot lose your hopes for the community. All right. This is crucial because the journey of those before us shows that change is slow and incremental.
Yeah.
Change really does fluctuate. It does not happen at the speed that we prefer. It does not look like how we want it to look like. Oftentimes when you're trying to do something that's a benefit for the community, challenges are going to arise. There's going to be so many setbacks. It's an ebb and flow in this thing. And when we look at those before us, here's what our generation can glean. Change is slow.
Yeah.
And we got to be committed to that slow progress.
Yeah, we have to just stay
That's where that
consistent.
resiliency pops
That's
in.
where that resilience pops. You have to be committed to the slow progress. Okay. I know we want and that's why it's important, because we live in this culture of instant gratification.
Yes.
Right. We want things now. We want to experience now. It's so now. God, do it now. If we don't have it now, then we need to burn the whole country down. And that's not how change has worked. That doesn't mean that things don't need to change. Yes, things need to change, but you just can't. It's not realistic to say that things are going to happen now.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work like that. And in that, here's why I really want us to focus on the slow speed of change. Because there's so many lessons and things that we can glean on a day-to-day experience that we could be missing out on if we just speed through this thing.
Yeah, that's true.
You want me to tell you why I appreciate slow change?
Why?
Because if it was to happen too quick, some things that needed to die in last season might come into new season.
Well,
that's good.
That's
some things that need to go might not go if it happens immediately.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
So one of the prayers I incorporate every day, I got it from a pastor named William Curtis, and he said in a sermon, I was just like, wow, I never just slowed down and think to pray a simple prayer like that. But it's, Lord, don't allow me to miss anything that you're trying to show me today.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
That prayer will help you to focus on the present. Yes, moving to the future, but it will help you to focus on what's going on right now. Yeah. And that's what's important. If we are going to be change agents, we have to focus on the now. Yeah. What can we glean now?
Yeah.
What can we learn now?
Yeah.
Right?
Because my mom even gave me the example how like a car, like the rearview mirror is smaller than like the actual the window you're looking out of. Mm-hmm. And like that's just such a great analogy. Because you mean, of course, you want to look at some of the past, but you gotta look at the grand scheme of it. Yeah, the big main picture.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I like your mom's analogy.
Yeah, me too.
Exactly. So y'all, we're about halfway already into this conversation, and we only 1/3 done with the conversation. Okay. So let's move on to our next subject topic. And just for you all, this is the subsection of creating change that is impactful for today. Yes. A lot of, and we're not going to get into no political discussion, but a lot of what I've seen when it came to the voting, from a lot of people, their comments were this. Well, other people are going to vote. I don't need to vote. They can do it. I don't need to do it. And let's even look broadly beyond voting, because that was just the most recent one. But you see, when it comes to maybe starting something, right? Other people might have the same idea. They can do it. I don't need to do it. So here's a question I want to ask. How do we resist from being apathetic to creating change, right? How do we resist from having a mindset that says other people can do what needs to be done, or other people are doing what needs to be done, therefore I don't have to? How can we resist a mindset like that?
Well,
that just made me think. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
It just made me think of like what we kind of touched on, how we all picked 3 different people, but they all kind of accomplished the same thing. Like just because somebody might have already done something similar to the dream you have, God wants to use you differently in that though. And he gave us all a different mind. And I just know that because I mean, with me being in cosmetology school, that was a fear I had. I'm like, well, it's already so many people doing hair and nails and everything, but God can use me to touch somebody in a different way. Even when people write books, like, no one, it's a lot of books out there. You don't know how your book would touch somebody, So just knowing that God wants, if you put it on your heart, he's going to use you. Just resting and knowing that God gave you that dream or that gift for a reason.
And with that comes a certain level of self-assuredness, a certain self-confidence,
that's true.
Which means you can't tear down yourself in it, right? You have to think highly of yourself. You have to be assured. You have to be certain that what you have to offer is necessary. Yeah. That's true. So I like that. And I mean, it brings me to something that I have on my manuscript. And you said it, because it's like you can offer something different,
That is correct.
right? Maybe you need to offer a different perspective.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody else needs to experience that different perspective.
Yeah.
I remember when I went down to Atlanta for my intensives, for my doctoral intensive in January, our professor was just like, I know many of you, I know what y'all thinking. You're halfway through the program, the project's starting to ramp up, and you're thinking you need to have a research and suggestion that's going to change the world. Mm-hmm. He said, no, we're not looking for that. What we're looking is for you to just move the needle, right? Yeah. We're looking for you to just maybe take with something that somebody has already done and just offer something different with it, right? Maybe give a different perspective or lens on it. And I think when you relate that to creating change, or doing things that you've been wanting to do, your dream, your goal, right? Mm-hmm. Starting that business. I know you may not want to because somebody else may do it, or you may not want to speak out on an issue because you're saying other people can do it. But other people don't have your perspective because you may bring something different to that topic, right?
And they might relate to you.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you can relate to someone who's been through what you've been through better.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Which means, right, so now we're getting to the topic of effectiveness.
Okay.
Right? And we're not moving there, but we're getting to the role of effectiveness, right? Because if somebody is preferring the way that you're doing it, that means there's something about you that is effective. Wow. You offering something different can be you offering something that's more effective in it.
That's true.
Now, that does not mean what was in the past is not good,
right,
or what somebody else did is not good. Mm-hmm. It just means that your method, your way of doing something, your method or way of bringing whatever you have to offer to the space is effective in achieving what the goal is. Right? So in a church, you're serving in a ministry. Maybe somebody just doesn't show hospitality like you do. Yeah. You are so effective in that. But everybody loves you. They're flocking to you. It don't mean that there's nothing wrong with somebody else.
Right.
It's just that's your gift. Yeah. And you are working it. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And people won't be able to experience you and your gift if you have that mindset of somebody else would do it, therefore I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kelly, what about you? I thought you spoken up a lot.
I am. I used to have that mindset, like, I know such and such will do it, or, someone else to do it. Why do I need to do it? And if, when you go to the grocery store, you see hundreds of brands that offer the same product, but they're all still in business. Yeah. And so that's kind of just a gentle reminder that what you have to offer, it can work and you can do it. And there will be someone out there who's ready to listen or learn from you or hear your perspective. And so it's really simply said, just do it. Mm-hmm. It's hard, but the reward is so much greater than the work that you'll have to do to kind of get to that point. So, yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you. You say you used to have that thought. Like, what pushed you beyond it? Was it just something in you that one day you just like?
Yeah, because I'm like, no, there's a better way to do this, or I'm just a logical, analytical thinker. And so working with people trying to create processes and things like that, I used to sit back and I'm like, no, thinking in my mind, like, no, there's a simpler way to do it, but never speaking up. And then once I started speaking up, it's like, oh yeah, you know what? That's great. And then, that kind of led to some of my successes in, work. But yeah, I think you have to speak up. Mm-hmm. Because you never know what the reception would be to it. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of just trained myself to know that the worst I could get is a no. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, if I want a yes, okay, it could be yes, it could be maybe later, not right now, but, a no is the worst. And at the end of that, I just move on, and that's what helps build that resiliency.
Mm-hmm. And you will never get to an answer if you don't ever try to launch out.
Correct.
100%.
So
I was gonna say that 100% of the shots you don't take.
No, that's a good basketball analogy.
It is.
I have.
Oh, I love that. Like I really use that in real life. Like the worst you don't know. You know.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I literally ask for anything and everything that I want, and a lot of times I'm shocked by the response of others. They're like, yeah, sure. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love your sweater. Can I have it? And they're like, you know what? I'm going to take it home and wash it and give it to you. I'm like, what?
And that's wild.
Right. I mean, that's people I know, but still, I'm just saying, you know, opening your mouth and asking for what you want or advocating for things that you think might be appropriate for the situation. I mean,
and when you pray on it too, you like, I know God. He said, ask. That's Matthew 7:7, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You ask in the door out open, knock in the door open. You know, think and you shall find. Okay.
Go ahead, Bobby. All right. So, Black activism, as demonstrated by our ancestors and elders, connects us to our community and history, as well as serves to affirm, heal, and celebrate identity. We find that through activism, we come to have a greater understanding of the self and our Black communities, evoking a sense of belonging, pride, and purpose while simultaneously working toward a common goal. Right? So you see, the major theme of Sankofa is community, right? Yes. You don't leave behind the community that's in the past, and you bring all of that with you to the present as community.
Right.
And hinting at our Bible study from
this
Jeremiah,
is making me think about it.
Text to the community, for the community, not the individual. All right. So here's the question. Although we are living in an individualistic culture, how can we daily embrace a communal approach to life?
Can you ask at the beginning?
So you paid attention to the quote, you ain't paid attention to the question.
Right.
You gotta pay attention to both. Although we are living in an individualistic culture, how can we daily embrace a communal approach to life?
I'll start off. So I just know that I don't feel like anyone around you God put them there by chance. So even if it's just at work or if you're at school, just looking out for others around you, be like being intentional and seeing how can you help anyone around you, you know, seeing what they may need instead of just worrying about yourself. It can really help. You know, you never know what other people are going through.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So just taking the day, because when you wake up, you can already speak, oh, I got to do this, this, and this. But just taking the time, just do something kind for somebody. You know, how can you lighten the load for a family member or anybody that day? Mm-hmm. It can help.
No, that's definitely communal, right? That's definitely, because you're not just journeying as an individual. You're showing this greater awareness for community. So that quote that I read, that's what the author is trying to get us to recognize. We do have this greater responsibility to the community, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that's what our spiritual gifts are for, is for the community. It's not for us to just hoard them and to just keep them, but it's for us to benefit the whole, the community. So firstly, when the author says these words, he wants us to embrace Black activism. Okay, for the author, Black activism emphasizes connectedness because one engages in actions that benefits the whole community. Ultimately, we must understand that we are not individual entities. Right. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what this culture tell you, you can't make it by yourself. But we are individuals in the collective. Okay, our lives are intertwined with one another, and because we are connected to one another, we have a greater responsibility to ourselves and to our neighbors. People simply can't survive without us, and we can't survive without them. And knowing this will cause us to engage in actions that positively impact the community and not hurt it. So when it comes to trying to embrace this communal approach to life, I think we got to recognize that there's two type of aspects of activism. Firstly, there's the public sphere, right? This is the sphere that we all see on TV, right? We see the people behind the microphones. We see them out in the community protesting. When you say their name, everybody knows them. And then there's the private sphere of activism. These are the actions that are not being captured by news outlets, and there's not a large following. However, what we must understand is that both are important. Correct. I feel like a lot of people, why they don't engage in change work or transformation work in people's lives or in the community, because you're only you're only limiting activism to just what you see in the grand scheme of things, right?
Correct.
That's right.
The news media, the pulpit, one microphone. But there's a whole sphere that is not being lifted, which is the private sphere.
Yeah.
Right? The public is not more important than the private because both are necessary as long as it benefits people.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what the public sphere would look like. Embracing a daily communal approach life can look like this: hosting a book club and reading a book that's on Black history and they're having meaningful discussion about the information. That's activism, right?
Mhm.
You're resisting empire. Everybody's benefiting from knowledge. Okay. It further can entail of sharing social media posts about legislation or events that will impact those around you. Right? You're making people aware of what's going on. You're an activist. Also engaging in self-care in groups with friends, right? Self-care is a activist act, but when you do it in community, that's activism. When we all take time as a community to gather together and to work on one another, maybe y'all go to the spa together. Maybe you withdraw and kind of just talk about all the problems together. If you're
therapeutic.
That's therapeutic and it's activism. Maybe it's just standing and listening in ear to somebody who just needs someone to hear them.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it's buying from Black brands, Black-owned brands, right? There are many great Black-owned brands that offer great things to the community. It needs to be supported. But those are ways in how you can embrace this more communal approach to life and be an activist. But it starts with also recognizing that it's daily things you can do. You don't need to have the microphone to create change in this world, right?
Yeah.
All it needs is for one person to hear one idea that you have to share, to experience one act of generosity from you, and transformation can happen. Okay? So let's move on to one insightful conversation before we talk about Bible. And that's what we'll end on, Bible. Let's go to legacy.
Okay.
I think it's important because I don't think you're ever too young to start thinking about legacy. And definitely as you journey through life, you ought to start thinking, what are you leaving behind for other people? As young adults, what responsibility do us young adults have to those who came before us? And what legacy are we leaving for the future generations? What responsibility do young adults have to those who came before us? And what legacy are we leaving for the future generations?
For the first part of that question, I love hearing from people older than me. I love talking to my elders in a sense because they have a different viewpoint of things that we don't. And I know life may look different from where they were from, but we still owe it to them to hear them out from their experiences because I learn a lot. I love, it's like I said, why go through something that somebody else already went through? They can help you get through it, So I feel like we owe it to them to still respect our elders and hear what they have to say, even and take what applies, but still let them know that they're important.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I think another aspect would be to not let their work disappear. The work that they've done and worked so diligently. People literally died for us, and I think we have to keep it going. The baton was passed to us, and we're gonna pass the baton on to the newer generation. So I think just like you said, looking back, but moving forward.
Not erasing the past because they have so much wisdom that we need to impart, and let us young adults not ever grow so arrogant to where we can't learn from nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
I will be the first to admit, as a preacher, I will not be who I am right now, where I am, had it not been for some wisdom that I've heard from the people who have done it at the level that I'm trying to do it at.
Exactly.
You can't get nowhere by yourself.
Nowhere.
But also, if you do not have an open ear to those who are literally in the areas of society that you're trying to occupy, do the things that you're trying to do, like it's going to be difficult for you to get there. I won't say you can't get there, but it's going to be extremely difficult because they know all the pitfalls.
Yeah.
They know what went wrong. And if you listen to them, they'll tell you, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to avoid. Because I done it that way. So therefore you can listen to me.
Yeah.
And just humbly recognize they're not trying to hurt you, they're trying to help you.
Yeah.
I think one thing for me, the most extremely most important thing, I think the responsibility we have to those who came for us is to limit ourselves.
Mm.
Don't hold ourselves back. We cannot accept things just the way that they are, right? We can't just grow complacent or comfortable in mediocrity, or in how things are, right? In a sermon, Dr. Otis Moss III, he said, "We are our ancestors' wildest imaginations and dreams."
I love that quote.
We are literally the actualization of our ancestors, our grandparents and our parents' dreams.
Yeah.
What they want, we are. And what they hope for, we are. And therefore, our responsibility to them, and for everybody who's really watching, is for us to recognize and embrace our potential, right? And to recognize that we literally are the materialization of what people have prayed for.
Yeah, I think when you think about it, I am what someone has prayed for. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really big.
You are what somebody has prayed for.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. And it makes me think about the second part of the question. What do we owe the future generations to give it our all, to be what we want for them? Because our ancestors didn't get to see us, now, but just to think of who to come after us. Even like me being a mom, like I want so much for my son, and I may not get to see it, all the good things that he do, but I would love to pave that for him. Just to know he'll get it one day, even if I can't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the legacy that you want to leave for him?
Yeah.
And what do you think that legacy, as far as the larger young adult community too, do you think that we need to be trying to create for these generation after us? Because quite honestly, I'm tired of the hoodie and jeans in 95-degree weather.
Sweatpants, the interview.
Yeah.
I guess real quick, what is your definition of legacy?
See, I didn't think about it.
Okay. What is legacy to y'all?
If I can go on the fly, this is not me looking at Merriam-Webster Dictionary Oxford.
Yes.
Leaving behind something that benefits the future, but allows them to carry it with them and pass that along to generations after them as well.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. And see, the first thing that comes to mind, how a lot of people talk about generational wealth, and that's huge for me. Of course, I want my son to be financially taken care of, but just to have faith in God. Like, I know that's something my mom and my grandmother, they have instilled in me, and that's what helps me keep going, because everything could be taken away in an instant, so just to know if my son is leaning on God, I know he's going to be okay. So honestly, just the faith, keep trusting in God. I want that to keep passing down my lineage.
No, I like that. Yeah, pass on the faith.
Yeah.
I thought that's why ancestors did to us.
Right.
Now we owe it to the generations beneath us, after us rather. Pass it on. What do you think, Kelly?
I think the legacy we're creating for the younger generations would be something similar to what the previous generations left for us. Is you have to be a change agent. You can't sit back and watch. You have to get in the field. You have to be active. And so I think one way to kind of look at it or define it is, I guess, a legacy for the up and coming generations is, you really have to put self aside and think about the community and kind of like the greater good, and how can this be impactful for not just me but those around me, and how can I be a change agent in doing this. Like you said earlier, you don't have to be in the front, out there protesting, holding the signs. You could be the one that organized it, or you could be the one creating the signs. There's always a spot for you to do something, and it doesn't have to be in the forefront. Some people like being in the forefront. You might like sitting in the background and doing stuff. So just find out where you kind of like fit in and all of that, and just do it again.
It's all impactful.
Everything matters.
No, I think people need to recognize that. So going back to the whole public private, because it's right. A lot of people, right, we're focused on Martin Luther King, but we actually also don't focus on the names behind the scene that made that March on Washington possible. Right. The Bayard Rustins, the Wyatt T. Walkers, right? Those people who were so instrumental to the success of all of these outcomes. And it's just to let you all know, regardless of what role you're playing, regardless of where you are at, you are necessary. Without Wyatt T. Walker, March on Washington would have happened. Without Bayard Rustin, March on Washington would have happened. Right? Without Bayard Rustin looking out for Martin Luther King would have been able to handle all this stress by himself. Right? So it takes a community, but again, it takes you to be skilled in who you are, to affirm your gifts and to know your gifts, but to also know you are so necessary wherever you are.
I just wanted to say, it made me think about Bible study. And my friend Kareen had actually gave the example, because we're one body, but it's like one big symphony. And one instrument might sound better than the other instrument, but when it's all together, it's just one beautiful sound. And that changed me. I'll keep that with me forever, because sometimes you can feel like you're not as important as somebody else, but God made everybody. He loves all of us. He loves you, and all of us are important.
Yeah. So to just now round up our time, we got about 4 minutes left. So we're going to bring this all together. There's a verse, Jeremiah 29:7. Here's what it says: "But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord in its behalf. For in its welfare, you will find welfare." We're going to stop right there. Because we're going to have some conversation on this verse. So you know this from Bible study, because this is our time on Saturday. Jeremiah is writing to the community of the Judean exiles who are in Babylon, right? When Jeremiah is writing, they're approximately in their 10th to 12th year of exile. If you recall, they have 70 years of exile. They have about another 58 to 60 years left. Their faith in God is being tried. They're doubting if God is even with them. But Jeremiah is writing to this community to, one, let them know it's a reason why you're in exile. One, God is trying to correct you because you was trying to be like other nations, and you were you were not treating a stranger right. That sounds familiar, but we're not gonna go there. But then Jeremiah lifts up this thing of pray to the Lord on its behalf, on the city of Babylon. Now that's kind of, for this time, that's radical. As Christians, we know that comes from Jesus saying, pray for those who curse you, love those who are your enemies. But for Jeremiah's time, as he's writing in about 587 BCE, that was actually very radical. You did not pray for your enemy. You did not treat your enemy well. But here you have Jeremiah saying, you will find welfare if you look out for the welfare of one another. Ultimately, Jeremiah is trying to get them to embrace community. He wants them to have this vision of shalom, which is this ultimate peace that you'll experience when you finally are in the glory of God and we're all together. We're at peace with God and peace with our neighbor. But Jeremiah is saying you can experience a little bit of that here right now. And recognize that you're so much a community that even in exile, your well-being is tied to your neighbor's well-being. I see that as God's grace for God to say, I'm still going to take care of you while you're in exile. But also Jeremiah is really emphasizing the communal aspect to life. So to close it out, how can we use our skills and gifts for the community and for creation as a whole, as young adults? And while you all pondering, I'll just go first. We are incredibly gifted on technology. We are creative. We have some brilliant ideas. I just pray that we use it for good and not for harm. I pray that we use it to benefit one another and not to just put ourselves up. I pray that it pulls somebody else out the doldrums of life and that we don't use what we have to offer as a stepping stone above somebody else and tearing other people down as we're trying to get to where God wants us to be. What about y'all?
That was beautiful. That was perfect. And just that, what came to my mind was just that everything isn't always a monetary thing that you get out of something. Like, I'll just use me for example. When I'm doing someone's hair, their confidence, how much more they feel better after, is something that I feel like I get paid in. So just using your gifts, like you said, not to tear anyone else down, but just to truly help somebody else. And it doesn't always have to give you some money out of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You can truly get other things from it.
The blessing is in what you
The
give.
blessing, yeah.
And somebody else being blessed. You got anything else to say?
So I guess what I'll say is, you know, like Courtney said, it's not always monetary. And, you know, whatever your gift is, it matters. You know,
Yes.
it could be, like Eric said, a listening ear. It could be offering a different perspective. And, you know, I think if you're in a place where you don't know what your gift is, you would just need to seek God and ask him to show you what your gift is.
Yes.
You know, you might have a big personality. So perhaps you would be someone that's good with interacting with people, or, you know, you might be a planner, but I think just getting out there and just doing something to kind of figure out what it is you have to offer is a way to kind of get into community. Like when I first joined St. Paul, I knew nobody. And so a way for me to try to find community was I volunteered at Vacation Bible School.
Yes.
You know, I joined the usher board. And so, you know, from
And
that.
you joined CAYA.
Oh, yeah. And I joined CAYA. That was it. And so from that, you know, my community grew. And so now I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm around people who believe like me.
Yes.
And, you know, we all want the same thing as far as growing in Christ. And so it's really all about just putting yourself out there. It can be scary at first, but you'll be surprised at how many other people are in the same situation as you.
Yeah. Well
Perfect.
said. Well
Yes.
said. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us on tonight. It has been a joy to have this great discussion with you all. Join us next month. We are going to be talking about navigating the quarter life crisis. We will have 2 mental health therapists with us. We're going to talk about how to navigate some of those things that's happening in the mid-20s, early 30s that young adults are going through. We don't quite know how to deal with it. So that'd be a great discussion. We look forward to seeing you then. Until then, be blessed, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah,
Amen.
bye.